From 13 ABC, Conklin Company, with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First, with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
Morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Conklin Company, a post-election edition. We made it. How about that? We're going to look back on the wild night that was and the battle already brewing on Capitol Hill over the so-called fiscal cliff. So, because this show is all about the election and looking forward, the Take 3 panel gets the whole show today. How about that? We finally give them a forum for 30 minutes. London Mitchell, Cumulus Radio. Fletcher Word has made it back after a little hiatus from the Sojourner's Truth. And Tom Troy from the Toledo Blade, who's off the campaign trail as well. Getting some work done at home the last couple of days, we understand, for the first time in a long time. It's great to have all three of you here to talk about the crazy night that was on Tuesday night. And Fletcher, you haven't been here for a while, so I'll let you have the first dibs here. I must say, on this show over the years, your predictions have not always rang true.
Oh, let's look at the transcript. What are you talking about?
But it did this time. I think it's closer. It was much closer than you ever thought it would be if we look back in shows in April or March. Would you admit that?
In April and March, yes. As the summer wore on, I think that I started hedging my bets and said, at one point I said, I see it entirely possible that Obama could lose the popular vote and win the Electoral College. I was surprised on Tuesday night at how wide the margin was, about 3 million in the popular vote. That surprised me.
Yeah, at some point that was a possibility. It stretched out.
Yeah.
The lead stretched out gradually on Tuesday
until
night.
he got to the West Coast.
Right,
that's when we really
So there was
exploded.
Some discussion, even Tuesday night, about Mitt Romney winning the popular vote. Tom Troy, your thoughts? You were on the campaign trail almost day by day with these candidates. Your thoughts?
Well, there was a great deal of enthusiasm on the Romney side, and they brought in huge crowds, 15,000 people, which is something John McCain never did, except in maybe one occasion. And there was an uptick, a definite uptick in the Romney momentum in Ohio, which of course is all important for Romney to win. But when he made his verbal misstep, we'll call it that, in defiance, and said that Jeep was thinking of moving all its production to China, that was the pin in the balloon.
Well, here in Ohio especially, and they hammered that home. In London, Diane Larson and I talked about this Tuesday, and with this race so close, Ohio was called, I believe, around 11:10 on Tuesday night. But before that,
Fox called it first, by the way.
Isn't that that is ironic, I guess you could say. But I said that Thursday night on Mark Benson's radio show, Monday before the election, that Thursday night in Defiance, Ohio, could have been the night that won the election for Barack Obama or lost the election for Mitt Romney, and making that Jeep comment, because you win in Ohio 50.1% to 48.1%.
And it's really, sometimes I like to think it's not necessarily the popular vote. Now, I think that comment really swayed anybody that might be sitting on the fence to go to Obama in Ohio. But when you stop to think about it, it's really strategy on getting those electoral votes, not necessarily the popular votes. So I think that the strategy and the constant work that the Obama campaign did to remind us over and over and over again of the Romney comments. The key message for the Republicans has always been conservative, smaller federal government means more local decisions, means more money in your pocket because you can make your decisions locally. I think that's been the message, but that was never really the strong message through the whole campaign. We had the argument against women's rights. We had the auto industry bailout argument.
Bain Capital assault.
Romney was on the ropes, I think, from day one, never able to really reinforce the one message that might have turned the whole thing around for the Republicans, and that was, how do you build a better economy? Well, you build a better economy, according to the Republicans, with smaller, more conservative federal government. And they never got the chance to really hammer that home.
Well, the thing I heard over and over again from the Republican side was that they felt he never responded adequately to the let Detroit go bankrupt. That was hanging out there from day one, and they hammered him on it, and he never really explained how he could make that kind of a prescription for the auto industry in this area where the auto industry was so important.
Well, he kept saying the managed bankruptcy, right? I mean,
well, several times
with government guarantees.
Yeah, right.
Although where you get that private money from at the beginning. But let me point out, I think, two things that, from the Obama standpoint, that were critical to his campaign. And one was, back in May, they made a very unusual decision, and that was to go after Romney then, to spend as much money as they could and hit him then. That's unusual because most of the time these campaigns, national campaigns, will wait until after the convention when things warm up. But they hit him then, and the unusual part about it was that if it didn't work out, there would be very little way that they could raise money after that if it didn't work out, because people would not be encouraged, but donors would not be encouraged, but it really put a gap, between them.
Right.
Very unusual decision.
And part of the reason
Jim
why
Messina.
Part of the reason it worked in their favor was Romney had spent all his money on the primary,
all his money in the
and he
primaries,
couldn't.
yeah.
He just didn't have the money to respond
At
and
that
tell
point,
the general.
they were trying to take out a loan just to.
They had
just
the
to keep
advantage.
pace.
The Obama people had the
Conservatives will
advantage,
say
and they worked it.
the primary really hurt them. Go
Yeah.
through that bruising, nasty, left a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
Yeah. The second thing is forces on the ground. This is not to be underestimated. I mean,
This is the ground game.
The ground game was just unbelievable, and not just on the part of the Obama camp. The NAACP here in Ohio and in other swing states brought out so many black voters and Hispanic in some cases, and La Raza brought in a lot of Hispanic voters. Here's a statistic. In 2008, the African American vote in the state was 11% of the total. This time it was 15% of the total, a swing of about 200,000 votes, because of the efforts not just of the Obama campaign, but also the NAACP.
I want to talk about the Latino vote as well. For the first time, 10%, over 10%, the margin for Barack Obama. And I talked with Viviana Hurtado. She worked formerly for ABC News, and now she works for a Latino nonprofit organization, a Get Out the Vote organization. I asked her about Marco Rubio, versus a Paul Ryan, in Florida, in Colorado, New Mexico. And here in Ohio, there is
would have made all the difference, I think.
You really do.
I've said that earlier.
Here's what she had to say. Kind of surprising.
Almost a fallacy, actually, to think that just because you put somebody that has a Latino name and looks like you on the ticket, that in mass people are going to Latinos are going to vote for that ticket. In fact, you need to look at the policies, and it was a policy that was very hardline on immigration, and that was very difficult. It wasn't just candidate Romney's positions that he articulated during the primaries, but remember that he had as an informal advisor Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, who is the intellectual author of really restrictive illegal immigration laws in Arizona and Alabama. He also was endorsed by Arizona Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaia. So it's really looking at this whole complexity, and I can't say enough, not just for Republicans but for Democrats. It's going to be important to have a rhetoric that matches policies for Latino voters going forward.
Hey, that's Viviana. London, if Mitt Romney reaches out, and this goes back to the 47% comment again. I mean, was that a case where they said, okay, we can't win this anyway, this group of voters?
Well, I think I'm not sure if that was their strategy, but let's forget about Mitt Romney for a minute. Let's look ahead. What's the Republican Party going to do? Is it going to be as cavalier with the Hispanic vote as it has in the past? I don't think so. I think that we've got a new complexion on the popular vote, if you want to put it that way. But I think it's different. The makeup is much different, and especially the Hispanic vote or the Latino vote and they've got so many tens of thousands of people over the next 4 years that are going to be of voting age. and they're not going to back away from making sure everyone is registered to vote.
All right, I want to move to moving forward. You talk about the next election in 2016, but this fiscal cliff. I think it's right next to the Electoral College, wherever that may be. You know, but. When you talk about this fiscal cliff, President Obama addressed it on Friday. We heard the talk, we're going to have to compromise. Well, here's the president on this fiscal cliff moving forward.
As I've said before, we can't just cut our way to prosperity. If we're serious about reducing the deficit, we have to combine spending cuts with revenue. And that means asking the wealthiest Americans to pay a little more in taxes. That's how we did it. That's how we did it in the 1990s when Bill Clinton was president. That's how we can reduce the deficit while still making the investments we need to build a strong middle class and a strong economy.
Back in.
Okay, and he referenced Bill Clinton in that talk from the East Room. Fletcher, thoughts on this unwillingness to compromise on the tax cut or the tax cut for the wealthiest Americans?
When we talk about the fiscal cliff, there are two aspects to it. One is that Bush-era tax cuts are going to expire, and the other is that that Congress passed this draconian measure that said if we don't reach an agreement, the super committee didn't reach an agreement, then there would be cuts across the board there. And I honestly think that there is going to be a compromise. I do. Now, while there may not be taxes, the Republicans may not accept more taxes on the wealthy that Obama wants. I think that by another name, it's going to happen.
New revenue.
New revenue. Somehow, loopholes,
right?
Fees,
they have to come to a common ground.
They have to come
have
there.
to.
Yeah.
It would be political suicide for everybody involved.
It would be economic disaster, some
for the
people
country.
think. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay, we're going to take a break and come back and talk about the Senate race, congressional races as they pertain to Ohio as well, and very close to home. So stay with us. Conklin Company post-election edition with Fletcher. We have London and we have Tom Troy. Back in just a minute.